Hello and welcome to episode 30 of Dunk's Movie Corner or Dunk's Movie Corner Pod or podcast, whatever you want to call it. If this sounds a little bit different, well, I'm trying out a different microphone. So if it sounds a little garbled or if it sounds better, either way, just let me know. I'm trying to figure out what was going to work best for this little ramble that I do weekly. If you are new, this is anywhere from like 10 to 20 minutes of me just quickly recapping what I watched in TV, limited series, or movies in the past week. This is, I would also say, more of a companion podcast to the Movie Bros, which is a podcast I do weekly with my brother, where we pick a movie, watch that movie, ramble, kind of discuss and banter about it. That is also posted weekly. But if you're looking for something short and sweet, you have found your podcast, hopefully. Uh, and these are obviously just my own opinion. I would say for a lot of these movies, unless it's obviously horrendous, I'd say watch them and form your own opinion, make your own decisions on if you like it or not. You can also find this podcast if you're listening on Spotify, great. If you're listening on Amazon or Apple, great. It's available wherever. It's also on Instagram at Dunk's Movie Corner Pod. I have recently tried to make some little slight adjustments on episode cover art or like the Instagram page profile pictures and redoing the bio and having clickable links, all things that have been suggested to me that I've just figured I should probably give it a go and see if it actually makes a difference in listeners or followers and all that kind of jazz. Not that I'm really doing this for any rhyme or reason. I don't think it's going to take off to anything major. It's just something fun that I do every week that kind of makes me feel like I don't know, it feels good to make something, I guess, for lack of a better word. Either way, I believe last week I ended with Oppenheimer because it was the movie that Hayden, my brother, and I were going to talk about during an episode of the Movie Bros, which is out now. If you want to listen to that, I think that's a pretty good discussion. It's about an hour and change over on the Movie Bros. But if that's where let's see, looking at my list, if that's where I ended last week, I started this week by watching The Producers. This is from 1967. It's much of a throwback. This is Gene Wilder being just Gene Wilder, just an absolute insane man. And it also stars Zero Mostel. I don't recognize him, but I think he's obviously from the time. I would rate this a 4 out of 5, including half stars. I use Letterboxd. If you've never heard of that, that's kind of how I keep track of my movies and my thoughts on them and my ratings and things like that I call back upon from time to time. This is. I don't want to give. I mean, granted, this is from like almost 60 years ago, but it's a playwright and his associate Gene Wilder realizing that we can actually make we can make way more money from writing a horrendous play that bombs than actually from one that actually does well. So they try to make the worst play possible for Broadway. It's called Springtime for Hitler. Yeah, the movie is insane. Like there's no way it's Mel Brooks. There's no way they can make this movie today. There just isn't. Um, I mean, but seriously, like from the first 2 minutes to basically the end, it's just bonkers. I cannot recommend that to anyone of I don't know, what's the right word? Anyone who's very prudish. Like I don't know if that's the right word, but I mean, the play is called Springtime for Hitler. It's obviously going to be way over the top, encouraging of him, but in a more like funny. I mean, yeah, it's a fun time. It's pretty quick. I want to say it's 88 minutes. So there is absolutely nothing in here that really doesn't need to be in here. And the way they get about getting the money for the play, the actual play itself, the reception to it, it's just yeah, absolutely crazy. From there, I went to 2017, and this was on my HBO Max watch list for a long time. I don't even remember adding this or why I found this, but the Ballad of Lefty Brown. Apparently, this is a song, but this is also a movie. 2017. It was. I mean, if you look at its rating on Letterboxd, it's a 3.1, and I think that's perfectly fine. I gave it a 3.0 out of 5. Um, it's about kind of a sidekick who's a guy he's been following in the Wild West gets shot. It's him trying to get revenge for him. Bill Pullman being an old kind of. They never explicitly say like uh he's like mentally challenged or anything, but it's kind of they kind of beat around the bush. Either way, Peter Fonda, Kathy Baker, and the guy who I haven't seen since Count of Monte Cristo, Jim Caviezel. I never know how to say his last name. He's done a lot of like Passion of the Christ kind of stuff. Um, but yeah, I would say good, not great. Like perfectly fine. I don't know if I'd really go out of my way to recommend this to anyone. Uh, yeah, it was perfectly fine. I guess is just how I'd say it. From there, while I was making lunch one day, I put on the documentary about the Blue Angels. I believe this is on Amazon Prime. Came out last year. It was in theaters, and watching it, I could see how, because it's very similar to like if you saw like Top Gun Maverick, except for it's a documentary and it's excuse me, and it's real. But on the flip side, this is like super cheesy, super like let's go military, which there's this part of that I kind of get, but part of that is I could not care any less, and I don't know, I feel kind of weirdly uncomfortable about that. Um, that being said, a lot of the flight stuff is actually really cool. Uh, how close those jets get within each other, I mean, like inches by the end when after they practice for months and months and months and months. But again, I can't stop, not think throughout like, oh man, I mean, hundreds. I mean, those all the jets, and they're doing multiple. I mean, they're doing like 300 shows a year. All the training, all the staff, the personnel, the equipment. I'm like, man, is that where my taxes are going? And like to a certain degree, I think that's okay. But I don't know. As a young Brook boy who pays taxes every year, doesn't skirt them. Not saying I'm perfect, but like I feel like there are other places that I would probably want funds to go to. Not to make this a political podcast, but obviously, especially in this day and age, it's hard not to have at least a tinge of that in everything, especially the last month and a half. Oh, not to get into like a side ramble, but all the jobs being deemed uh not needed in the like US Parks Department. It makes me upset, just to say the least. Especially with like how many amazing, beautiful places there are just in I mean, in this country, but obviously in the world. But like uh, from mountains to ocean to just there are so many places that need people who care about them there to facilitate their care and facilitate like, oh, if people want to go to these places and be a tourist and see these sites, like there needs to be like staff there to accommodate that. And I feel like it's just so dumb as a place to cut costs. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm still thinking about this, and I haven't really formed a truly like this is the sentence and thought that I want to say about this. So that was probably complete utter nonsense. Either way, uh, that was a bit off track, but that was the Blue Angels again. Like probably 3 out of 5. It's hard. I feel it's hard to grade like a documentary because it's real. It's hard to be like, oh, this wasn't good, even though this is what happened. But the visuals were great, and I can see seeing this in a theater actually might be pretty cool with all the flight stuff. That's why movies like I think the upcoming Formula One movie is gonna be amazing in theaters. Top Gun Maverick was amazing in theaters specifically. Um, is some of the content something that I'm kind of meh about? Sure, so it balances out. From there, I went and saw in concert downtown Seattle, Benaroya Hall. La La Land, where they basically play the movie up on a screen, on a massive screen, and have lighting on the background that kind of matches whatever's going on the screen, which is really cool. And then they have a full-size live orchestra with the composer for the movie, Justin Horwitz. Hurwitz. I never know how to say his last name right, but he was actually there conducting, which is really cool. And as someone who has seen this movie probably more than almost any other movie, maybe I don't know. It's definitely one of my favorite movies. I know every line, every cadence, all the things. Um, the trade-off is now that I've seen this so many times, I can pick up on even like the smallest differences between a live performance and obviously the movie. And some things I think translate really well, but there are other things that, because it's a jazz music movie that has like jazz music in it, uh, it's really hard to replicate exactly at the same jazz sequences because a lot of that is improvisation. So it was, I mean, for me personally, again, this is going to be entirely different for someone who may have, went with me to see it for the first time, and I'm sure that hopefully they had a good time. But uh, there's a couple of the little bits in the movie. I was like, oh, that was different than the movie, and I prefer the part in the movie. But there are also sometimes like, because it's a live performance, they do a intermission and a like an intro at the very beginning, motifs that are not part of the soundtrack that are really cool that I have never heard before, which was really, I thought that was pretty cool. There are parts of the movie that were too loud for the music wise, where like the hard hitting beats of the movie where it's just two people talking were almost a little bit drowned out by the music, and vice versa. There are parts where like, oh, this should have been way more punchy music, and it's not as punchy. I feel like there was not enough volume adjustments either by the band itself or by the audio people who were recording the band. All the music and audio aside, because again, that's kind of the reason why you go to something like that. Because again, of course, I love the movie. I love dressing a little bit nicer. It makes me feel a little bit more like Sebastian or AKA Ryan Gosling from the movie. But the story itself, I don't want to get super far into it because I'm honestly really hoping I can convince Hayden to do it as an episode for the Movie Bros because I have a lot of opinions about this. As again, it's one of my favorites. But there are, I mean, I could literally probably talk about every single minute of that movie. Yeah, I don't know why. It was. I think I saw this in theaters with two work friends in like 20. I think it's a 2017 movie, 2016. I honestly can't even remember when this thing. Oh, 2016. Yeah, it was like a year after high school. These two girls and I went and saw this movie, and none of us knew it was a musical. We just sat there like, fuck it, why not? It's got Ryan Gosling for them, and I was like, Emma Stone's kind of cute. And afterwards, I was like, did you guys? I was like blown away, and the two girls like, hey, it was fun. Yeah, I just started this not obsession with it, but like for a long time, it was the only physical CD I had in my like shitty little beater car. Like before you had aux plugins for your car, there was CDs, and I was like one of the only ones I had. It's I've now got it on vinyl, signed by the composer. There's just a lot of like romantic beats in that I really not just agree with, like how they did the movie, and uh, it feels like Hollywood. I don't know how else to explain it, but it feels very Hollywood, but like the way Hollywood should be. Granted, the movie is literally about Hollywood, so maybe that's just what I'm thinking of, but that's La La Land. You might hear about this again, hopefully maybe sometime soon when I can convince Hayden to, because he's seen it. He does not obviously like it as much as I do, but I'll have to see if I can convince him to do it as an episode. From there, last night, excuse me, I have not been sleeping super well the last couple days, but last night, in order to get ready for tomorrow, Wednesday, which is the day we usually record Movie Bros, and then we edit and post it on Sundays. But tomorrow's episode is about the movie Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. This is a 2023 release. I've seen this. I think this is maybe my third watch. First time was surprisingly pretty fun. Second time was like, oh, pretty good on a rewatch. Um, Still fun. I feel like it's lost its captivating bits though by this time around. It is basically just medieval Guardians of the Galaxy, like a little like fun ensemble, like bad guys, but they're really good, all anti-hero vibes. And again, lots of fun. Even if you've never played Dungeons and Dragons, which I have only done it once, and I was terrible at it. Um, yeah, it's very enjoyable. I mean, obviously, I'm going to talk about it a lot more with Hayden, so I'd say wait for that episode. That's going to be posted this coming Sunday. Yeah, I would give it a 3.5 out of 5. Like, yeah, pretty good, pretty good. But I don't know. There's a couple of the actors that I take issue with. There's a couple of the like some of the cinematography I take issue. Well, okay, I don't want to get into it. Hayden and I will talk about it. Um, and I don't want to ramble too long on these. Again, I try to keep these episodes pretty short and sweet. That way, if you're I'm running to the store, or I'm doing a super quick workout, or whatever, or if I'm literally just, I'm vacuuming my room or the house, I need something to listen to for literally 15 minutes, I've got you covered. Uh, Either way, I think that's more or less everything I watched this last week. That was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And not obviously, I think I can probably mention it, but I am still slowly working through. It's called Monsters, the Eric and Lyle Menendez story. I think I'm on episode 6 of 9, each episode being roughly an hour-ish. And again, it is interesting. Javier Bardem is just he. I mean, he is great. The character obviously is definitely not great, but he is a great. I mean, you've seen him in No Country for Old Men, Dune. He's great in Dune. Um, he was an he was probably my favorite bad guy in the more the more recent iteration of James Bond. He was in Skyfall. He was really good in that. Um, but he plays the pretty fucked up dad to the Menendez brothers, who they kill in real life. Spoiler alert. Although that happened in, I want to say, the early 80s, late 80s. Either way, I've been rewatching that, but I think that's more or less everything I saw this week. If you've seen any of these things and have opinions, let me know. If you think, if you liked or didn't like those things, you should watch X, Y, and Z, let me know. If you think the redesign of the brand of this, the little icon for every episode, the Instagram art is an improvement or not. I felt like the original was pretty bland. Didn't even specifically say Dunk's Movie Corner Pod on it anywhere. So ChatGPT helped me out a little bit, which was actually something I've never really used in that kind of way to make an image, which I thought was kind of interesting. But also, it's super fucking scary to think that's something that can potentially just replace artists. Both worrisome and interesting. So that's the life we live. All right, sorry, that was a ramble. That was episode 30 of Dunk's Movie Corner Pod. You'll hopefully hear this. You'll hopefully hear this today, maybe at some point, depending on how editing and the rest of my day sorts itself out. But I'd say thanks for listening. Hang in there. Do all the things if you want to do, like, subscribe, hit the bell, tell your friends, family, pets if they listen to you, romantic partners if you have one. Uh, yeah, and I'll see you or talk to you or talk at you because it's literally just a ramble next week.